Mom, what's up?
I hear my daughter Michelle's indifferent voice on the phone. Just checking in. You should call sometimes, you know. Her response is a simple, "Yay, yo, I'm fine." On the phone is my daughter Michelle, a college student living on her own. Ever since she moved out, I've been living a lonely life alone. I'm turning 50 this year. It's been 25 years since I lost my parents in a car accident and 20 since my divorce. My ex-husband and I worked in the same building and often crossed paths in the elevator. Eventually, we started talking, going out for drinks, and he confessed his feelings. I liked him too, so I said yes. Our dates were varied: movies, bowling, skiing, skating, fireworks, beach, zoo, and aquariums. A year later, he proposed, saying,
"Let's build a happy home together."
He said so. It was a heartfelt offer to someone like me without a real home. Our marriage was blissful. We got along well and were blessed with 2 children. But happiness didn't last. When our kids were 3 and 1, we divorced over differing values. The reason was a difference in values. During the early days of our marriage, we tolerated each other's quirks out of love, but it eventually became unbearable. My husband was an extreme penny pincher, to put it nicely. I was the opposite, somewhat of a spender, which he couldn't stand. I worked while our children were in daycare, spending within my salary limit without affecting the household budget. However, he would complain about every single clothing or shoe purchase I made. His constant nagging about how to use electricity and water became a daily ordeal for me. It was agony for me. Gradually, our arguments increased, leading to divorce. He took our 3-year-old son, and I took our 1-year-old daughter. With the kids so young, we decided not to meet again for their sake, to let them see any new partners as their real family. If either of us found a new partner, we wanted our children to see that person as their real family. 20 years have passed since then. I never remarried. My daughter, Michelle, now 21, has become a fine college student. I wonder how my son, Hunter, is doing now. I've never forgotten him. The adorable smile when he called me Mom and asked to be held. He's 23 now. Has he found a good job? What profession is he in? It intrigues me, yet I haven't contacted my ex-husband. I feel it's not my place to know. He's not my son anymore. He probably has a new mother. Looking back, since the divorce, I've worked hard, focusing solely on my daughter's growth. I never had the luxury to think of my own joy. My life was devoted to my daughter, but I've always been concerned about my son. Lately, I've been lost in thought alone more often. Then one day, I finished work early at a client's. Maybe I'll take a detour for once. On a whim, I took a train in the opposite direction of home and headed to a beautiful cape bathed in sunset. This spot, with its lighthouse, lookout tower, park, and cafe, was filled with memories from dates with my ex-husband. Ah, it's nostalgic. The sunset is still as beautiful as ever. I mused, watching the unchanged sunset after all these years before entering a cafe in the park. There, a young man sitting alone at a terrace table, sketching in a notebook, caught my eye. I was startled by his resemblance to someone. He looks just like him. He was the spitting image of my ex-husband in his younger days. Around his mid-20s. His features, complexion, and even his build reminded me of my ex when we first met. Could a stranger really look so similar? He must be related, I thought, and approached him. "Excuse me, this is sudden, but you resemble someone I know. May I ask your name?" Looking back calmly later, I realized that suddenly asking a stranger's name must have seemed odd. At the moment, I was too flustered to think it through. The young man looked puzzled for a moment, but then replied,
Smith.
"And your first name?" "Philip," he answered. Just as I thought. It's him. "Excuse me, but how old are you?"
I'm 23.
No doubt about it. This young man was my son, Philip, whom I hadn't seen in 20 years. Lost for words, he then asked, "And your name?" "I'm Eileen Taylor." I quickly made up a name, worried that he might mention me to my ex-husband. I had no intention of revealing that I was his mother. "Nice to meet you, Eileen." He smiled.
Lovely weather today, isn't it?
"Yes, it is." We chatted briefly about the recent weather over coffee before parting ways. I was overwhelmed with joy. Philip, he's grown so much, become such an adult. His voice, just like his father's. I'm glad I met him. Since then, I've adjusted my work schedule to visit the cafe more often. I learned that Philip comes to the cafe twice a week, on Wednesdays and Sundays, arriving just before sunset to draw as a hobby. He works in real estate. Over time, as we met twice a week, we started to talk about various things. He shared stories about his work, family, childhood, and student days. And I talked about my job.
Don't you have any hobbies, Eileen?
Not really. I've been busy raising my daughter, who just turned 20 last year. Maybe it's time I find a hobby for my retirement.
Why don't we paint together?
Oh, I'm a novice. Haven't painted since high school art classes.
I started painting after getting a job too.
Really? You're quite good, I remarked, looking at his sketchbook of a sunset.
Thank you. I'm sure you'll be able to paint like this soon.
Maybe I will. Persuaded by Philip's words, and decided to start painting. First, I bought pencils, a sketchbook, and a watercolor paint set. Twice a week, we sketched the sky, sea, and park trees together. I was quite bad at first, but gradually improved with Philip's guidance.
It's like I'm teaching my mom to paint.
A statement that brought me immense joy. As days grew shorter and evenings darker, Philip and I began our sketching sessions earlier on Sundays, our common day off. Despite being able to meet my son only once a week, I cherished these moments. Even if I couldn't reveal myself as his mother, being just an acquaintance was enough for him. That's what I thought. Enjoying time with my son, whom I hadn't seen in so long, felt like a dream. Then one day, My ex-husband called unexpectedly. He told me that Philip wanted to meet his real mother. Philip had apparently found out that his current mother wasn't his biological one when he looked at his birth certificate while applying for a job. I decided to meet Philip. I wonder if Philip will be surprised to find out I'm his real mother, or maybe he already had a hunch. With my heart racing, I arrived at the restaurant we'd agreed to meet at. Opening the door, I saw my ex-husband, who had aged considerably, sitting at the back table. Even after all these years, he's still instantly recognizable. Feeling nervous, I turned my gaze to the young man sitting next to me. And then I caught my breath. The young man sitting beside my ex-husband was someone I had never seen before. The young man next to my ex-husband was someone I'd never seen before, but he looked remarkably like me.
Mom, it's been so long. Should I call you that? I'm Philip.
The young man said, reaching out for a handshake. You're Philip, I gasped in surprise. I had been convinced the young man I met at the cafe was Philip.
What's wrong, Eileen?
It's nothing. Just shocked at how much you've grown. Oh, it's nothing. I was just surprised by how much you've grown.
He's 23 now, of course he's grown.
My ex-husband laughed as if he was amazed. That's right, isn't it? I realized my mistake. The young man at the cafe, resembling my ex-husband and sharing my son's name and age, was just a stranger. That day, Philip and I had many conversations. He told me,
Actually, I'm getting married soon. I wanted you to attend the wedding.
but wouldn't that be unfair to your current mother?
No, it's okay. She understands.
I accepted the wedding invitation. The next Sunday, I went to the usual park and met the other Philip. I have something to tell you. I shared how I had long mistaken him for my son, and also about my recent meeting with my actual son. It's funny, isn't it? Silly me, all alone in my misunderstanding. When I said this, he shook his head.
I had a feeling you were mistaking me for someone else.
Really? He nodded.
But if you believe that, I thought it was okay.
So he knew I was mistaking him for my son, and played along. Thank you for everything so far, I said.
No, thank you. I've enjoyed having someone to talk to and paint with. If it's okay with you, I'd like us to remain friends.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, and please continue to be my friend. I thanked him sincerely, and be grateful for the unexpected friendship. Since then, I decided to call him Phil by his last name. We continued to sketch together once a week. 2 months later, my son Philip's wedding took place. Philip, in his tuxedo, looked incredibly handsome. The bride was also a beautiful and kind woman. Watching them, tears naturally flowed. Being able to witness Philip's happy moments was truly fulfilling for me. 4 years later, encouraged by Phil, I submitted a painting to a city exhibition, and, amazingly, it was selected and awarded a bronze prize. It was set to be displayed, which was an unexpected and delightful achievement for me. I was astonished by this achievement. Phil was also very pleased.
Eileen, your painting is truly beautiful. I recently found a park with a gorgeous view of the mountains. How about we go sketching there soon?
Oh, that would be lovely. Let's go next Sunday. Painting has become my life's work. I doubt I'll ever be bored in my later years. All of this is thanks to Phil. I am profoundly grateful for our encounter.